I'm a friend of Sarah Connor. I was told that she's here. Could I see her, please?
No, can't see her. She's making a statement.
I'll be back.
Since its release, James Cameron's The Terminator has gone on to become a quintessential 1980s sci-fi horror movie. And yet, despite the first two films in that franchise being what most consider classics, every other Terminator sequel has fallen flat on its face. Terminator is a perfect example of a franchise overstaying its welcome dramatically. The Terminator series should have probably stopped after the first two installments, and yet, much like the unkillable T-800, just kept going and going and going. Released in 1984, The Terminator is the film that catapulted James Cameron and Schwarzenegger into superstardom. It was the perfect vehicle for the young former bodybuilder and the fresh director to show what they could do. Cameron was fresh off of being fired halfway through directing the sequel to Roger Corman's film Piranha when he got the idea for Terminator from a nightmare he had. He dreamed of an unstoppable metal skeleton tracking him down, attempting to kill him. After developing this idea further and crafting a story around this imagery, he pitched the idea of a time-traveling robot assassin to his girlfriend Gail Ann Hurd, who had been working as an assistant around Hollywood at the time. She thought it would be perfect to use as a calling card for the two of them. Cameron wrote a treatment, optioned it to Hurd, with the condition that if she got it set up somewhere, he would direct the project. Finding funding wasn't particularly easy, but she was able to find backing and the pair started producing what was essentially a low-budget indie horror genre exploitation film. It follows the exploits of a waitress, played by Linda Hamilton, who falls in love with a soldier sent back from the future to protect her from a mechanized killing machine. Stark lighting, atmospheric chase sequences, and jaw-dropping stop-motion visual effects push the film from being a run-of-the-mill low-budget feature into what could be described as a cult classic. The film was so successful that it gained Cameron access to bigger studio productions. He wrote and directed a sequel to Ridley Scott's seminal sci-fi classic Alien, which would be released in '86. From there, Cameron would develop The Abyss, and then T2. Terminator Judgement Day is what is referred to as a departure sequel. It takes the central concept or conceit of the original film and turns it on its head to create something altogether different. While T2 does have time travel and of course it features a homicidal robot or two, the film is purely an action movie, recasting Arnold Schwarzenegger's villainous T-800 as a heroic bodyguard of the future, savior of humanity. T2 has gone on to become even more popular and acclaimed than its predecessor. And after this, it's where the creation of a franchise comes in and then immediately starts to fall apart. T2 really wrapped up all of the plot lines and unanswered questions that the universe had to offer. Due to the fact that these films are time travel stories, they have a cyclical nature. The ends and beginnings of the film talk to each other in a way that the traditional films do not. And T2 closed those circles for the most part. The film ends with all the plot points that lead to the dark future having been surgically removed from the existing timeline. It leaves the central thematic question of, is fate real, open to interpretation, but the movie has removed all narrative potential for more story with these characters pretty concisely. At this juncture in the franchise, Terminator 2 set up a perfect, unknowable certainty. It's a film that revolves around man's fatalistic relationship with predetermination. The fact that time is the ultimate enemy and that in some schools of thought, it's a flat circle where everything that's happened has already happened and free will is an artificial concept, a construct we create to feel better about our lives and ourselves. So in turn, making a sequel to this particular movie in some ways violates that very idea. It provides a concrete answer. Either free will exists and Sarah and John did stop the robot apocalypse, or it doesn't and fate is in control, which means all of these movies are pointless because it doesn't particularly matter how hard you try to fight the future, it always comes, it always wins. Leaving T2 where it ends is the perfect and logical conclusion both for the film itself, but also for the overall franchise. And yet, there's more. Due to the fact that T2 made $520 million, which adjusted for inflation is close to $1 billion, by the way, it was only a matter of time until someone tried to continue that story for the best reason ever: money. Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines was released 12 years later, in 2003, to poor critical reception, but over $400 million at the box office. The film took a definitive stance. It said, fate exists, free will is a myth. It picked up with an older John Connor, a new T-800, and another evil, more advanced Terminator sent back from the future to kill him. And with no Cameron involvement, you get what is essentially a by-the-book, early 2000s studio film, none of the charm, energy, or creative thematic vision that T2 exemplified. It creates the worst question in all of art: why does this exist? Terminator Salvation released in 2009. and was an attempt to pivot the franchise's core idea away from time travel, instead opting to chronicle John Connor's future war against the machines. In theory, this could have been a great direction to take the franchise, but in execution, it was anything but. Glossy VFX, a muddled script, and no real reason for existing other than an exec in a high-rise saying something to the effect of, "We have Terminator, might as well make something, right?" So the studios answered again with Terminator Genesis, released in 2015. It aimed at rebooting the franchise by having characters we know, played by younger actors, reenact scenes from the previous movies. It also had one of the worst marketing campaigns in modern history, giving away the big second act twist that basically sets up the success of the movie in both the trailer and the film's poster. So that went well. Due to a complicated rights arrangement, which we won't really get into here, Terminator Dark Fate saw the rights to the Terminator franchise falling into the hands of James Cameron again. Unfortunately, Cameron as a producer and Cameron as a director are very different beasts, and so this film feels more like a retread than Genesis, which was just a film that's high concept amounted to, hey, remember that one shot? Terminator isn't a franchise of adaptation. Each attempt at Terminator after T2 was an attempt at revolution, not evolution, and that's an issue. To use an example of what evolution looks like, the Fast and the Furious franchise fits perfectly. The film started out as a small-time crime story about two men on opposite sides of the law. It was very personal, and then eventually, as that got old, these films reinvented themselves as heist films, and then as large ensemble cast pseudo-superhero movies, literally giving Vin Diesel a tragic superhero origin in the beginning of Fast and Furious. Another good example is the original Planet of the Apes film franchise. They hit dead ends repeatedly, but then they made new advancements. They fully reinvented themselves. They literally blew up planet Earth at the end of Beneath the Planet of the Apes, and they still made 3 more films, a TV show and an animated show, in the original film universe. Each has a political theme or lesson they're tackling, and they construct a new and exciting story around that theme each time out. They're not making 6 movies about the Charlton Heston character, which is ostensibly what Terminator ended up doing. Now, it is easy to say that the Terminator franchise serves as a prime example of the world we live in today. Nostalgia reigning supreme, intellectual property being more valuable than movie stars or a good story, and everything being repackaged at will. And it's also quite easy to say that if you're going to reboot something or revive something or continue it, you should take risks and try something new. But Terminator is an interesting case of a franchise literally not understanding what it's about. If you as an artist, if you as a writer want to continue something that you at one point felt done with, take a step back first and make sure you remember and understand why you created it in the first place. So that way, you don't end up creating something that stands in argument with the very thing you set out to do in the first place. Terminator is a series in some ways about the cyclical nature of time, and yet what time did to Terminator is actually bury it alive. Well guys, that's it for today's episode of Nerdstalgic. If you enjoyed this one, hit that subscribe button. I'm sure right now 2 more episodes, and hopefully I will see you guys in one of those next videos.